Basically, I have 36 years of motorcycle transmission experience, and I had 10 years experience before I opened my own shop doing nothing but motorcycle transmissions. So we're all trained professionals, and this is all we do. We do nothing but motorcycle transmission. As well as doing all the, the undercutting modifications and the magnafluxing and the inspecting and the beefing up of certain parts, we also do cryogenics to help as far as, any kind of grain structure integrity problem, with the steel. Cryogenics is when you take a part and you bring it down to minus 300 degrees Fahrenheit. Steel has two properties. Every molecule has both of these properties, but it's how the molecule is aligned. And what the cryogenics does is it realigns these molecules and increases the grain structure integrity. And minus 300 degrees takes and will realign these molecules. It's something that NASA found out about because as analytical as NASA is, they found out that the steel in the spacecraft was coming back better than when it left. And it was due to the deep freeze of space. And so that's how cryogenics came to be. And the other thing that we do is we do a micro polishing process where basically, if you've ever seen any parts that look like chrome, but they weren't, basically we do that process also. That's available. That reduces friction by about 10%. There is a process also that we do. It's a coating. It's a tungsten disulfide. And again, this was something that NASA developed. And it's a coating that actually impregnates the steel. And as it gets used, it works itself in better. And it reduces friction also. The polishing process reduces friction by 10%. The coatings by themselves reduce friction by 10%. But when you put the two of them together, it's like 1 + 1 = 3. It reduces the friction by 30%. And normally we'll see about a 10 horsepower gain with this process. We also offer ceramic bearings. Ceramic bearings will probably give you about a horsepower per bearing. Most transmissions, it's only the two main bearings in there, so you can pick up a couple horsepower that way. But the coatings really free things up, cut down on wear characteristics also, and give you free usable horsepower without putting any more undue load on your combination, on your engine. It frees up horsepower. So you're making more horsepower without putting more load into your setup. Shovelhead transmissions with old 4-speed transmission. It's basically, well, I don't even know if it's a glorified tractor transmission, but it's pretty primitive. It's pretty crude. The very early ones were loose roller transmissions, meaning they didn't have caged needle bearings that were a bearing assembly. You had to load individual needles into there to actually make the bearing set up. There's undersized and oversized pins to get the proper clearance in there. Very antiquated type transmission. We still do some of the old 4-speed stuff. It's not one of my favorites, but we do it. The later type 4-speeds with the caged needles, they're easier to do. We do both, a little bit more costly because of time involved with setting up the loose roller transmissions, but we do those. Well, the one thing that the early 4-speed transmissions have, if I could pick out one thing that is good about those transmissions that no other transmission has, is that on those transmissions, you don't shim the gears, you shim the shift forks. The shift fork is a plate that bolts to a receiver that has the pin on it that travels inside of the shift drum, or the cam plate, depending on what year you're talking about. And by changing the offset of the fork with shims, because it bolts to this receiver, you can put shims between the receiver and the shift fork and move the shift fork either left or right. Now that shift fork, there's two shift forks, and each one engages 2 gears. So you're looking for a sweet trade-off as to getting proper engagement in each gears, and also not creating a situation where you would have a bike get in 2 gears at one time, or a bike that would jump in a gear. We disassemble, magnaflux, undercut, and rebuild the early Harley transmissions. a lot of the guys that race, older shovel heads and such, will run the conversion case. S&S makes a good one. Spooth makes one too, but the S&S one is the one that we prefer. And they make a case that will bolt into a shovel head that will take the new modern 5-speed transmission. And that's the most popular upgrade for a shovel head, to get away from the early 4-speed and get into a new modern type design transmission. We just redid a transmission for a shovel head. It was funny, the guy sent us his original receipt from 2002. It's a shovel head that has the 5-speed conversion done into it, and the bike runs 930s, and we had done the transmission in 2002 for him. It was using a Spooth conversion case in it, and he started having issues just recently with it. So he sent it back to us for us to diagnose his issues, and basically when we disassembled it, the case had broken behind the main bearing at the main drive gear, which caused that to shift and cause him some issues as far as shifting goes. And we were able to go ahead and retouch up the transmission. I mean, basically, the transmission's been in the bike for 14 years, and we just had to touch up some of the undercuts and go ahead and replace the case. And we replaced the case with the new S&S type case. The early Harley 5-speeds used a 6009 bearing, and the 6009 bearing is not a very heavy duty bearing, and they only used it in the very early year 5-speeds. Then they changed to a 6209 bearing, which is a much bigger bearing, and the Spooth case uses the 6009. The S&S uses the 6209. So it's a much stronger bearing, and there is more area in the case for the bearing to load against. So I think the chances of case cracking and failing are a lot less than they are with the 6009 bearing. So this conversion is a very good conversion for the guys that are running a shovel head. Getting a new modern 4-speed in there is a much, modern 5-speed is a much better way to go. Give us a call. Telephone number is 727-447-4552. My name is Mark, and I will answer the phone and talk to you.